The origin of the sexes is an irrefutable line of evidence for the existence of God. The next 7 minutes will show you why. As the old saying goes, little girls are made of sugar and spice and everything nice, while little boys are made of snips and snails and puppy dog tails. As they grow older, the differences become even more pronounced. Their brains, muscles, and skeletal structure develop the innate characteristics defined by their chromosomes before they were born. The existence of two sexes, male and female, is an essential factor of human life. Without the physical differences between the two, reproduction would be impossible, and collaboration to raise the offspring would be far more difficult. But humans aren't the only creatures in which this is true. Most land animals, sea creatures, birds, and insects can be divided into two observable sexes with readily distinguishable features of their own. Even beyond that, numerous plants possess a distinction between what we call male and female, with both types typically required for pollination. All throughout nature, we observe the concept of a male and female divide. But how did this come to be? Why do we have males and females? According to evolutionary theory, there once was nothing. Around the time of the Big Bang, the nothing developed into matter, which was sent all over the universe through the explosion, and matter gradually turned into life at the level of a single cell. Naturally, a single cell would have to produce asexually. One cell dividing itself into two, the two dividing themselves into four, and so forth. That is considered to be how reproduction happened for millions of years. But at some point along the way, two sexes would have had to have been developed to lead to the world we see today. So, some of the single-celled organisms slowly began to develop the qualities of male and female, eventually resulting in organisms that were strictly of one kind or the other. As more developed life came into being, the distinctions were further developed into all of the male and female distinctions we see today. But is this how it happened? Does this explanation hold up to science and reason? In fact, it does not. Evolution's explanation for the existence of two sexes fails on two grounds. First, sexual reproduction runs directly contrary to the logic of evolution itself. Evolution holds that the development of life occurs through natural selection, or survival of the fittest. The strongest, most efficient life forms eventually outlast the weaker, more inefficient through generation after generation of reproduction. Qualities that give one creature an advantage over another are typically the ones that win out in the long run, and inefficient qualities eventually die out. But from this standpoint, sexual reproduction does not make sense. The theory holds that creatures went from asexual to both asexual and sexual to strictly sexual. But in that process, natural selection would prefer the speed and self-reliance of asexual reproduction. When a male and female come together to reproduce, any genetic deformities one brings to the relationship may be passed on to the offspring. As these weaknesses are passed on, survival becomes more difficult. If a species were acting in the best interest of its survival, it would not switch from asexual to sexual reproduction and risk passing on any unhealthy qualities. Additionally, sexual reproduction is inefficient for the speed of the process. Asexual creatures can reproduce any time as they need or desire. Sexual creatures must go through a process of mating, and even then, reproduction does not always result. In a species race to stay alive and eventually thrive, transitioning from asexual to sexual reproduction would be one of the worst evolutionary decisions it could make. The second reason evolution fails to give a satisfactory explanation for the development of the sexes is it fails to answer this question. How did these organisms know to create this system? Two fully independent beings would have had to develop perfectly complementary parts in order for this to work. But how would one have knowledge of the other? How would each one understand the physical characteristics the other one was developing? What further complicates this matter is that they would have had to develop this function at the exact same time. It would do no good for a male of a species to develop 100 million years before or after the female developed. Time is the standard answer for many evolutionary conundrums. In other words, given enough time for trial and error to play out, adaptation can bring about the results we see today. But in the case of the two sexes, time is exactly what these beings would not have. It would have all had to happen at once, in perfectly complementary ways, and even in the same geographical location. all randomly occurring, without each knowing what the other needed. This is not possible. For these reasons, evolution struggles greatly to give us a sound, defensible explanation for why we have been split into male and female. It takes a lot of faith to believe that this could have happened without any intelligence behind it. So, if evolution cannot give us an answer for the origin of the sexes, we are still left to ask, where did they come from? Consider the answer offered by the biblical worldview. At creation, God made all things with specific designs and functions. He built into the world the realities of male and female plants and creatures. And, finally, He created humanity. He created a first man. And from the first man, He created an equal and opposite woman. He designed them to complement each other perfectly, both physically and emotionally. The evolutionary disadvantages posed by sexual reproduction over asexual reproduction fit neatly within the biblical worldview. In this worldview, brute survival of the fittest is not the aim. Collaborative love, community, self-sacrifice, and other virtues are held up as important and necessary. Complementary sexes are the perfect fit for these values. Two sexes have existed from the very beginning. The nurture of a mother, the guidance of a father, and all of the other characteristics innate to the two sexes are not an accident. They happened by design. They happened because there is a God who loves us, and He is the master designer behind it all. If you want to learn more about the lines of evidence that prove the biblical worldview, please visit linesofevidence.com.